the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
Pretty often. John, that's why you're on the podcast every week. You're one of my favorite and smartest baseball minds out there today. John, Marcus Stroman. The Yankees bring in Stroman, sticking with the starting pitching market. What do you make of the Yankees ultimately going with Stroman over taking a more expensive, maybe better gamble on a Jordan Montgomery or Blake Snell here?
Yeah, and it's funny to talk about Stroman now because he's pretty much the antithesis to what I was talking about. Because Stroman is your set it and forget it, 150 plus innings, third starter. You don't worry about him in that sense. If Hicks is a potentially high ceiling, low floor gamble, Stroman is more of a high floor kind of middle ceiling gamble. I think it makes sense for the Yankees because they let go of a lot of their starting pitching depth in the Juan Soto trade, in sending, I think it was 5 players ultimately in total to San Diego, most of the 4 of them pitchers. So between that and the loss of Luis Severino, the loss of Domingo Germán, that rotation got thinned out pretty badly this offseason. I think Stroman is a good safeguard against having to use too many rookie guys or against having to try to flounder around for some quad A off the wire arms. And I think it is a more sensible financial move than a Blake Snell. I think the difference here is if the Yankees were not, one, already committed to paying Carlos Rodon a considerable sum of money for the next few seasons, and 2, presumably already talking to Scott Boras about what a Juan Soto extension would look like, or at least trying to figure out what the numbers for that might look like, on top of the money they owe Aaron Judge and the money they owe Garrett Cole, and et cetera, so on and so forth. Maybe there would have been room for a guy like Snell, but I have to imagine that that Brian Cashman probably felt better with the cheaper, yet to some degree more consistent alternative in Stroman than taking the big risk on Snell. And I think it makes sense for where the Yankees rotation is because they don't really need that number 1 type starter. They already have one in Garrett Cole, and you could argue they have another in Carlos Rodon if Rodon is healthy. What they needed were those consistent, stable innings, 5 to 6 innings at a time per start from Stroman, who I think the thing you worry about with Stroman, he's not a strikeout guy. He had a walk rate spike last year that didn't come with any additional strikeouts, so that's got to be a little concerning. But he's still one of the premier ground ball guys in the big leagues. I'm not crazy about the Yankees' defensive infield, but I think it's good enough to make him work. And he's I think the Marcus Stroman fun fact that always goes around is he has never once put up a FIP above 4 in his career. Every single season on aggregate, his FIP has been below 4. He has a career ERA of 3.65, a career FIP of 3.63. He's pretty much always bang on with his peripherals. And, for as much as, again, it doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of, Marcus Stroman's not an exciting signing. He's not a guy who takes a team from would-be contender to full-on contender. He's not a signing that takes a would-be title contender into a favorite. But he is a guy who provides stability. Ideally, he's a guy who provides who gives you the flexibility to kind of let your younger arms continue to develop instead of having to rush the bigs. And I think, again, financially for the Yankees, it makes more sense to have a short-term, smaller commitment to a guy like Stroman than it is to try to make a long-term deal with Snell work or a long-term deal with Jordan Montgomery. The rumor going around was that the Yankees offered Snell something like $5,150 and didn't hear anything, so they pivoted to Stroman. Maybe if they'd waited out a little longer, Snell might have dropped into something like, okay, I'll do like a $390 or something and do a short-term high AAV deal. But I think
isn't Stroman a sneaky better? It's so weird to say this, but safer 3-year play than Blake Snell.
He's 100% safer. Yeah. He's a 100% safer play, and I think especially given that the free agent pitching market beyond him, and leaving Snell and Montgomery out of it for now, the free agent pitching market beyond or that's left now with Stroman gone and those two aside is pretty weak. Now you're down to the Mike Clevenger, Michael Lorenzen, I don't even know who comes after that. Mike, is Zach Greinke if he wants to come at James Paxton, Matt Boyd, Rich Hill if he's still trying to pitch. Like the market on starters beyond the top 2 guys is pretty much done at this point. Stroman was the last best option left that wasn't one of those 2 guys. So I think, again, especially for a Yankees team that needed, I think, another established starter, definitely had to add someone. I think Stroman was the best bet they could have made. So I like it for New York for the most part. I think obviously the X factor too is Stroman is a little bit of a character. Certainly, he has a reputation, obviously, for being a very high intensity, high energy guy. I think kind of in the same mold as a Josh Donaldson, where that can be a great thing sometimes, but that can also wear on guys other times. I think there's a real pronounced chip on Stroman's shoulder that, again, is a plus and also can definitely be a minus. But hopefully for the Yankees, it that works out and that Stroman stays on his best behavior. And I think that should work out because I think particularly pitching for a contending team, pitching for, in a big market, pitching for a storied franchise, I think is the kind of thing that a guy like Marcus Stroman would really want and appreciate. So, again, it's a bet. It's not a risk-free bet. There's no such thing, but I think it's as safe a choice as the Yankees could have made if they weren't going to go the Snell Montgomery route. And for what it's worth, it seems like they never were going to.
And I wonder how much of it stemmed from the Carlos Rodon situation from last year.
I think that if they didn't have Rodon on the books, they might have been more inclined to go after a guy like Snell. Too. But especially with how little they got out of Rodon last year, how bad he was, there probably has to be that worry of like, look, we might be on the hook for a lot of money to a guy who is simply not going to be worth it. Now
we can't do that with him and Blake Snell, who people with a you're in contract hell.
That's a chips all in push that I would expect more from a team like, I don't know. I mean, I could still see like a Texas maybe just randomly jumping in there and being like, Blake Snell, how would you like 5 years and $150 million?
Yeah, I mean, they just won a World Series and got nothing from Jacob deGrom.
Money's not real in Texas, so
no.
Although I guess the argument in Texas instead is, well, we've got Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer, and Tyler Mahle coming back at some point in the second half. What do we need starters for? We can get through the first half of the season with,
hold on,
Nate
you
Eovaldi
just
and
can't
Andrew
pencil
Heaney.
in Jacob deGrom.
No, and look, I'm not saying that the Rangers should do that. I just
are there people still doing that in 2024? Are there Rangers fans right now? Like they're texting their buddies. They're like, dude, I cannot wait for Jacob deGrom to be ready to go come September.
There are always going to be people doing the second half return from injury guy is as good as any trade deadline edition, and that person is named Mike Elias, or any GM, honestly. Look, Craig Breslow is going to be doing the same thing with. Although that implies that they're actually good Red Sox pitchers just waiting on the injured list when that is just straight up not the case. But hey, that's a topic for a whole other podcast.
Go Sox.
Yeah. Go Sox.
Why or why not, Jon Tayler, Evan Carter ends up winning Rookie of the Year in 2024?
I mean, I think it's as good a case as any. I mean, I don't, looking the easiest way I find for Rookie of the Year stuff. Well, no, because I was going to say Yamamoto's in the NL. I think NL Rookie of the Year is probably a pretty safe bet. That's Yoshinobu Yamamoto.
Yeah.
But if you look at, and I'm using Fangraphs board, look at the 2023 updated. Here are the guys, I think, in the AL who, presuming they get the call at some point, if they either start the year with the team.
Go. Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.